We are obviously, well, can I say obviously anymore? Probably can't. But I am a male. You are a female, but we both write stories with a female protagonist. And this is something that I've experienced, and I've experienced since I started writing the Con of Cold series. There are quite quite a couple people who are like, "You can't write that story," and I'm like, "Why can't I write that story?" It's like, "You're writing a story about an Asian female." I was like, the story's not about her being an Asian female. It's because when I concepted my story, it just came in 5 seconds. I knew who she was, what she was, and what the story was. It's like that was just how the character appeared to me. But there are a lot of people who feel you can't write that. And I think there's a difference between when you're writing characters and when you're creating these stories with these relationships between people. That my focus in these stories is the relationships. They could be anybody. It could be the story could be with three dogs, and I could write the same kind of relationship storyline with three dogs. It's the focus is on that. There is a difference between writing a story about a particular character, in this case, a female character, and writing a story that is about being a female.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that now you as a female have a different perspective than I would have in writing that story. So do you find that there's a little bit more of an advantage or things that you can pull on that you can go, I can do that. I know that, and other females will know that, but a guy's like the only one I remember is because my ex used to talk about that. Her friends talked about this all the time. Was certain things with their bras that I remember them having conversations about. I was like, I'm putting that in there because that's something guys we never have to deal with that. And there was like the bra strap was like. And that was like a part of the story between the ladies in there. So is there stuff like that you include with Marceline and her friends that it's like, this is stuff girls and females are going to know just because we just know?
Yeah. And I like what you're saying is like, yeah, it doesn't matter necessarily who it is. It's just like, I mean, it's important who this person is. It doesn't matter like what, if they're male, female, like, but that does come into play with how this character experiences things.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, right. So it's a girl. And so she's going to have like, especially if she's kind of like an action, protagonist, she's going to have these things that come up that maybe a man wouldn't have to deal with in like a, in a fighting context. And yeah, I mean, everyone is different. And so every female is different. Every character has to have something about them that makes them feel real. And that's another thing that I tell authors, like when I'm editing a book, is to make sure that your characters have enough of like a uniqueness about them so that, say, I feel like there's some authors who have characters and you could just change the name on the dialogue tag and it wouldn't make a difference because the dialogue is so bland that it doesn't reflect who that character is who's speaking. Right. And so if all your characters sound the exact same, it's kind of one note. But if you give your characters just these human qualities that make them different from each other, that's more of a relatable story. And that's what helps with side characters becoming people's favorite characters. Like I had, there's always people that love the side characters maybe more than the protagonist.
Yeah, there are a lot of Daryls in the world.
Yeah. And that's another thing is like your side characters you want them to be fully fledged people too, and like to have their own goals that they're pursuing. And they're not just there to support your main character. They have to have things that they're trying to do as well. And of course they are, as the author, like they are there to support your main character, but to add those qualities that make them feel real. And yeah, so I like that you did acknowledge that this is a female character that you were writing, and that you added things in there that a woman would have to deal with,
right?
And make those characters feel real. That's important.
Yeah, it's because you have to touch on certain things that you're like, in this situation, is there something, oh, I wouldn't do this, but I can see from the situation, and I know from being around females, I know that's something, and I can ask my female friends because I've met females and know certain things and can put them in there. But again, it's we were talking about writing for female heroes, and you were talking earlier about the hero's journey. This is something that, and I have made sure to do this with my character Kana, is number one, she's tends to be more masculine anyway. She's more of a tomboy, so that's easier for me to not have to go into depth with. Obviously, I'm not feminine at all, and I can relate more and write more for a female who's leans more masculine and is in that kind of tomboy role. But I did note that I have noticed that there's a difference between the female's hero's journey and the male hero's journey. And I wanted to see what you thought about this, because I definitely wanted there to be, I first started writing it kind of thinking of that kind of male hero's journey. And a lot of that is going into, the belly of the beast. Pinocchio's got to go into the whale to save his father. It's a lot of saving your father with the guys. It's like, even something like Star Wars, like Luke had to go save his father, and on and on and on. In the case of the females, I have noticed, though, especially a lot of popular pop culture female characters, Ridley in Aliens, Sigourney Weaver's character, goes to save Newt. Kill Bill, Uma Thurman's character, she goes into the heart of the den, not to save her father, but to save their children often. Mrs. Brisby in the Secrets of Nim, Diane Freeling in Poltergeist, she literally goes into hell to bring Carol Ann back from the other side. Is that something that you have noticed? I've noticed that once I started really looking into the hero's journey, and that how when I looked at female characters, that was a big difference I noticed between the males who were saving their father, the past, and the females who were saving the children, the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that that's definitely the case. And I think those lines are definitely blurring now. But yeah, it's like the women's journey is kind of more emotional, and it's kind of about self-discovery along the way. And both heroes' journeys that kind of have to be something about like saving the world, saving so-and-so, saving something.
Yep.
And even if it's saving yourself from a situation. But I think that that's like what your strength is, like as a man writing a woman point of view, is just having a different spin on what that journey is for a female character. And again, it's like not every woman is the same. So that's why kind of blurring those lines makes a difference, and how it's read. And like you were saying, oh yeah, she's more of a tomboy, but yeah, she's just maybe more of an analytical and more like, and like, to bring it back to role reversal, like for example, J.K. Rowling writing a male character. Right. And I think something that she brings to it as a woman writing for a boy is kind of that emotional, and for him, I felt like obviously it's a long series and he grows up in this series, but it is about self-discovery in addition to defeating the villain, in addition to figuring out how to navigate this magical world. And so just I don't think there's anything wrong with writing an alternate perspective, as long as you're thinking of those things, like thinking right, how your character would think.
The interesting thing about Rawlings too is that a lot of the Harry Potter series, especially even is more dived into in the books, is that there's a lot of father figures there. There's a lot of that she pretty much nailed as far as a young, obviously I was a young man, and the relationship to older men who are father figures in your life. And again, I always kind of point that out. I was like, well, J.K. Rowling could write that, and she's obviously a woman. And I think she only has a daughter, or she only had a daughter when she wrote the books that she was trying to take care of. And then conversely, Stephen King, Firestarter, which, obviously it's basically a metaphor for females, going through puberty. That's the kind of the layer on top of that. And I think sometimes if you have men and women are way more alike than they are different. Our differences, though, kind of, at the extremes, that's when they really come out. That's why you get the most violent people are mostly men, and the people who are more compassionate, you're going to find way more, like nursing. You're find way more women dominate nursing far more than men dominate engineering, kind of things. And it's kind of that separation. But there's a lot of places in the middle where they cross, and you can kind of empathize with. I might not be, you know, on that extreme of aggression or on that extreme of compassion, but I understand aggression, I understand compassion, and I can write a story based off of, on these characters, based off of them going through that emotional journey without actually having to be. That's why you can write a story about a serial killer without actually killing people.